Hey everybody, welcome to another Cook Along Live. I'm your host, Robert Sogamoni, and we're doing vegetarian lasagna today. This is going to be a fun one. I have a couple of guests, well I had a couple of guests coming, one canceled a little bit earlier today. So my remaining guest should be here momentarily, running a little bit late. They've got my beer. So I got no beer right now, I'm just drinking a Diet Coke. I know they're terrible for me, unfortunately I needed a soda after today. Very busy day. Let's get started, shall we? Stole that from Joshua Weissman, if you watch him on YouTube. We got a bunch of mushrooms. If you do not have your mushrooms already chopped up into coarse pieces like this, go ahead and grab a food processor and toss them in there, blend them down real quick. You just want a nice coarse chop. Now took me about an hour to chop all of these by hand. Wouldn't recommend it, kind of a pain. We're just gonna put them into a cold pan. And this looks like a ton of mushrooms. The cool thing is, when we turn the heat on and kind of start cooking them, they're gonna reduce down. They're basically gonna cook down into a very, very small pile of onions, and we're gonna be adding the rest of our stuff to it. Got our mushrooms in, we're gonna turn our pan up to high. Go ahead and let those guys get started. I'll move this over to the side. So, while we're waiting on this to go, we're gonna start chopping our onion, because our onion's going in next. These guys are gonna start actually, no oil, no nothing. You want this in a dry pan. What that's gonna do is it's actually gonna make the mushrooms release all of their moisture. Mushrooms have a lot of moisture just by default, like when you pick them and they grow, they're almost like sponges. So when you heat them up, they release all of that moisture, and they're not really gonna stick to the bottom of the pan because that water is gonna actually kind of coat it and keep them from sticking. I want about a cup of chopped onion. So I've got a half of a very large onion here, which should give me about a cup of that. If I have a little bit more, that's cool. I've also got a bunch of garlic over here that I'm gonna be chopping up as well. And I can already kind of hear these guys sizzling. And so these guys are gonna just start smoking, start sizzling, cooking down. That's exactly what we want. And meanwhile, we're gonna start with our onion. I've shown you how to do this a bunch of times. This one I've already peeled the skin off. I have a half an onion from a previous thing, so that's what I'm using. But same kind of thing applies. We don't need this cut very, very finely. Just a coarse chop is great. So I'm gonna kind of come up about halfway, cut horizontally like this, about 3/4 of the way through. That should be good. So I'm just gonna cut most of the way through, but I don't want to intercept my horizontal cut on the edges. I don't want those pieces kind of coming apart. I want the onion to stay together. So I'm gonna cut almost all the way back to where that horizontal cut is. And a couple of these pieces are gonna fall out, that's fine. You can just chop them down. And then as soon as my guest gets here, my dog will probably go crazy and rush the door as he usually does. So I might disappear for a second. We'll switch to the guest cam. And then here all you're doing is chopping up along the onion. And you'll notice that it just kind of cubes itself naturally. Now what I'm going to do with the onions real quick, I'm just going to kind of give them a stir. Some of the onions on the bottom, or the mushrooms on the bottom are getting warm, but I want to get that warmth kind of spread throughout. You'll notice that there's a lot of steam coming off of these already. Nothing's sticking to the bottom. If I can kind of brush this away, you'll notice that the bottom is still clean. That's because the moisture that's coming out of the mushrooms is actually creating a steam layer. And remember when I talk about how you can't sear steak because if there's any moisture on it, the steam prevents it from searing? That's exactly what's happening here. They're not sticking because they're releasing enough moisture to create a layer of steam so they don't stick. Really kind of a cool little phenomena, I guess, if you want to call it that. And you'll notice the mushrooms are actually starting to cook down quite a bit already. I'm going to take some salt, sprinkle it through, and that'll just kind of encourage moisture release. And you can put a pretty good amount of salt in the sauce. We're going to be adding a lot of tomatoes and a lot of acid, so the saltiness is not going to be overpowering, but it will allow them to release a lot of moisture. Dust off the salt into the pan. All professional cooks do that. I don't know that, I'm just guessing. So I've had a couple people ask me about the people that I'm inviting over, especially since we're still sheltering in place. Everybody that I invite over is a fellow real estate agent. And I mean, that doesn't mean that we're exempt from potentially contracting any kind of virus or anything like that. However, most of us kind of stay inside. We follow some pretty stringent shelter-in-place protocols on ourselves. So there's a very low chance that anything is going to get passed around between us. Also, we do maintain social distancing while we're here. We stay about 6 feet apart. And I'm not wearing a mask, yet I do have to sanitize my kitchen when I'm done cooking anyway, so I think I'm doing okay. And actually, the one friend who canceled on me earlier, she doesn't think she has COVID, but she kind of came down with a little bit of a cold, so she bowed out because of that. So that's about a cup of onion. I'm just eyeballing it, but that looks about right. All I've got is this little itty bitty bit of the onion root stem. Toss that away. You might notice that you can actually see some of the moisture right here in the bottom bubbling away. And the bottom of the pan is actually, you can see, almost got like a pool of water down there. And that's just water coming out of the mushrooms. We still haven't added any oil to this pan. And as you know, oil and water don't really mix very well. So adding oil before the water's boiled off really isn't going to be doing you any favors. So, happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Dad, I'm sure you're watching. Happy Father's Day. You guys are out in Cortez, Colorado, I think, or something like that. Never heard of it. Never been there. But it does look like it's a pretty fun place to be. Tony, happy Father's Day to you. A little closer, stepdad, but all the same. Real cool guy. Lots of alcohol. What are we doing with the alcohol? Is it that kind of a Father's Day? I wasn't notified. You'll notice that there's a lot of steam coming off of this, and we're essentially just boiling off the water. And that's really what we're waiting for right here. All right, I am dehydrated. Got a headache, so that's probably not the best thing I should be drinking right now. So we're gonna do onions. We're gonna do garlic now. I'm gonna just kind of get these up and out of the way. Move the garlic down. Now, once again with the garlic, you're really just gonna kind of set it down on the cutting board like this, flat knife on top, and then you can either push down with your hand and just crush it. The peel should come right off, like so. And you've already flattened it, so when you actually chop through it, you don't have to worry about doing any horizontal cuts. All of your cuts can just be vertical one way, vertical the other, and you'll have a pretty nicely diced piece of garlic. And what I'm gonna do is actually kind of crush these guys all first. If you have a bigger one like this, you can definitely pound down on it a little bit. Just be careful of the front edge of the knife, pound on the back, the heel. Pop the skin right off of that guy. Same over here. And you've got a little bit of time before all that water boils off, so there's really not a huge rush here. Now the kitchen is gonna smell really, really earthy because of the mushrooms, which is really nice. And if you're putting meat in this lasagna, you can either have the mushrooms and just put half meat, or do like a pound of meat and then like a quarter pound of mushrooms, just to kind of keep the same ratio. Really, the mushrooms are almost, if you're doing a vegetarian style like what I'm doing tonight, the mushrooms almost just replace the meat. With meat, the one thing you're gonna have to kind of keep an eye on, or that you're gonna have to take into consideration, is you're not gonna be able to boil off all of the oil that comes out of the meat. So if you get a high fat meat and you're doing like an 80-20 or a 85-15 meat, what's gonna end up happening is you're gonna have to drain the meat and then put it back in the pan. So the way that I would do it is I would do mushrooms first, let the water boil off, add the meat, let that water boil off until all you have is the fat, drain them both, just meat and the mushrooms all at once, put them back in the pan with some oil, and then get started with your onions and garlic and everything. So slightly different procedure. yet just as easy. We'll pop these guys off. Anybody got anything fun going on for Father's Day weekend, or pretty chill weekend for everybody? I'm planning on doing not much other than sleep. I'm actually meeting a colleague of mine's client for a final walkthrough. His wife had a bit of a medical thing come up, so he's at home taking care of her. She's fine. She's gonna recover, but he's not able to go out and meet his clients, so I'm gonna go and just make sure the final walkthrough goes well. I have a buyer looking in Martinez for something, so I'm just kind of keeping an eye out for him. His price point is a little bit below what is readily available, so we're kind of looking for something to pop up that we can really quickly get in on. And then I've got some other buyers that I'm working with. A couple of them are waiting, and one of them is also similarly looking for something that's a little bit below where all the current housing prices are. So just kind of doing what we can. All right, so I kind of chop these one way, and I'm just going to kind of dice them the other. Again, it doesn't have to be very, very finely diced. Just a rough chop is good. There we are. Nice. Hi, Glenda. How's it going? Cortez is an hour ahead. Yep, Felicia's in Savannah. Or you're in Savannah, or are you in Pooler? Or are you in one of the smaller cities on the outside? So she's 3 hours ahead of me. So right now for her, it's 9:15. So a couple of cook-alongs ago, one of my friends brought up the possibility of me maybe switching these to Sunday nights instead of doing Friday nights, because Friday nights are kind of busy. And I know that some of us really, really enjoy it on Friday night because you guys get to kind of relax, kick off the week with a cook-along. That being said, my schedule is getting busier, so I may end up moving it either to Saturday or Sunday, just to fit my own schedule a little bit better. That being said, on a Friday, I can definitely start a little bit earlier. So instead of doing a 6 o'clock cook-along, I could do 4:30 or 5. And that would allow more people to kind of jump on and get started to have a decently timed dinner, if that was something that y'all were up for. But I'm still kind of playing around with the idea, not 100% yet. Cool, so our garlic is done, our onions are done. I'm just gonna kind of set these aside. Really all I'm waiting for is the water to kind of boil off, and I think we're good. Yep, there we go, we're starting to kind of stick to the bottom, which is perfect. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna kind of move them away from the bottom. Gonna add my olive oil. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna kind of put my onions right on that olive oil and let them kind of sizzle a little bit. And now what you're doing is you're toasting the onions and you're toasting the mushrooms. All the water is gone, so that oil is just, it's not fighting with the steam. It's just imparting heat to the ingredients in the pan or the pot. And really all we're doing with this part is making the sauce. So you can do this up to a day or two in advance, and then just have the sauce ready for when you're assembling your lasagna. So I've still got this on high heat. Now I'm just gonna kind of mix the onions up with the mushrooms. I'm gonna let that cook for like another minute or two, just to kind of soften the onions. And then we're gonna go in with our garlic. There we go. Now when we put our garlic in, we're going to do a very similar thing where we kind of open up the center. I'm going to get a little bit more olive oil. Hello, puppy. You're not going to charge the door. Hello. Yeah, you're good. His bark is larger than his bite. Here he comes. So this is my colleague Anise. She is from Keller Williams as well. Where is my button for this?
Hello, how are you?
Oh, my button's not working. All right.
He probably smells my dog.
There we go. Yeah, it probably does. So Fez is over there saying hi. You guys will get to say hi in just a second. You just got to stand like right by those chairs.
Right here?
Yep, right there. And then look at that camera up there.
Oh.
So that's Anise. She's one of the agents in our office. Awesome agent. Just joined a couple months ago?
Yes.
Like a month and a half ago or something like that. So
Hi.
fantastic. Back to the food.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. So we're just going to kind of get this going. I am going to go grab my olive oil because I need a little bit more to get those garlics going. You can have a seat at the
Okay, sure.
counter or bring a beer over. We'll get that going. That way, first door on the right. Do a little bit of olive oil right there in the middle. We're gonna get some of our garlic. I invited Carla, who's another awesome agent. She actually just left our office for a different office. She unfortunately couldn't come over because she was a little bit sick. She said it wasn't a bad thing. She just had a bad headache and just wasn't feeling well. So here we go. You just kind of want to get that so that it's fragrant and then mix it in. Very awesome. I finally got my beer.
Right, it might be a little warm.
That's okay.
I totally forgot the wine, so don't kill it.
I won't kill you.
Okay.
Glass for you.
Thank you.
Let me switch this over real quick. That button's still not working.
It smells delicious.
Why, thank you. There we are. Cool. So, she brought Hop Stupid. Did you know that I used to work for Lagunitas Brewing
No,
Company?
I didn't.
I was a software engineer at Lagunitas Brewing
Oh,
Company.
that's awesome. I was like, he hasn't tried this. Let me bring it.
Oh, yeah.
I was wrong.
It's all good. This is an amazing beer. There you are. You can see the stack of Lagunitas I got over there.
Oh, man.
We used to get a free beer, for free box of beer, free case of beer every week.
Jesus.
I couldn't drink through it fast enough. I don't drink that fast.
I know. Me either. What's your dog's name?
Dog's name is Fezzik.
What is it?
Named
Boy or
him
girl?
Boy.
Boy.
Princess Bride reference, if you know that movie.
I do.
So he's Andre the Giant's character.
Ah, okay.
You know, it's very fitting because he's a gigantic dog.
We got a cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers to great food.
Yes, thank you. And Anise actually gave me the recipe for this. So she pointed me out to this, so that's where I got it from. Very, very cool. Not warm yet, so. All right, we got this going. It's nice and fragrant. Smells amazing. What we're going to do is we're going to make just a little well in the center here. And we're just going to kind of scoop out our tomato paste and put it right in the bottom of the pan. We're going to turn this down to medium-high because we don't want to scorch this, but we do want to cook it a little bit. We'll just scoop it out with a knife. Like so. And what I'll do when I get this kind of simmering is I'll put the stream up on the TV so you can actually read comments and see what people are saying. I did that last week. I didn't get it set up today before we started.
Oh, on this TV here?
Yeah, so you can
that's
actually,
awesome.
yeah, you can see what's going on. And we're just going to kind of mash this in and just kind of let it toast a little bit. And as we're doing that, we're going to kind of scoop in mushrooms and onions and garlic from the sides. And what you're doing is you're toasting the tomato paste, which is going to give it a really lovely roasty flavor. As you're mixing it in with the onions and the garlic and the mushrooms and all the rest of the stuff. Very cool. We're just going to let that sit for like a minute. And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to line the bottom of our baking dish with about a cup of tomato puree. I'm just going to eyeball this. It's about a cup. The rest of this is going to go into the pot, like so. I'm just going to start stacking cans so that I can recycle. And we're going to get this stirred in. Very similar to the tomato paste. This is just going to kind of toast up the tomato sauce a little bit. And I'm going to start turning this down a little bit more. So we're going to go down to medium. And the recipe called for 1 can of, like 128-ounce can, so this size can of crushed tomatoes. I couldn't find one, so I just got 2 15-ounce cans, which is 30 ounces. Good enough for government work. We'll just go ahead and add those, and then it also wants you to add a cup of water. Now these 15 or 16-ounce cans, 8 ounces is a cup of water. So what I'm going to do is actually fill these halfway, because they're 16 ounces, 15 ounces, and then I'm going to rinse the insides and get all the crushed tomato off and pour it into there. So I got this all filled with about halfway with water. Just go can to can, and what you're doing is you're rinsing out all the crushed tomato that's stuck to the sides of the can. And you can add that right to the pot. And all of this will be clean for recycling. Swoop. Very cool. We're gonna go ahead and get this mixed. And at this point, we're just reducing. You're just gonna let this kind of cook down for about 20 minutes. And let it reduce down. I'm actually going to turn the heat back up to get it simmering and then turn it back down so that it doesn't, you don't want it very, very quickly boiling. You don't want like a rapid simmer. You really want to turn it down once the thing starts simmering and let it just kind of bubble away. As we're stirring, we want to add our herbs as well. So we've got a tablespoon of dried thyme. Let me do that one. A tablespoon of sugar and crushed red pepper, about 3/4 of a teaspoon. Get all those guys in, and then we'll just stir them around. Get them nicely incorporated, and that's going to flavor and kind of add aroma to the sauce. That's starting to go, so we're going to turn this down to medium-low. And just kind of let this simmer and spit and go. There we are. One of the great things about using silicone and wood is they don't conduct heat, so you can put them on hot things and not burn yourself when you pick them up later. Let's see, we'll kind of get this all cleared. And I will get the TV over here set up. We will do a doot, and we will do a I have a pretty nice setup here. YouTube. Hey Siri, stop the timer. That's so that I remember to turn on my oven. Already set for 350. We'll let YouTube load while it's loading. And so we got this simmering. Turn it back up just a little bit because it's not going quite fast enough. How's everybody's weekend going? Like, it's Friday, it's summer, well, I guess we got 2 days until summer officially, but it is 100% hot outside. I've been watering my plants daily. Do you guys? Whoa! Well, I guess we got 2 days until summer. I don't want to hear myself. Quiet. There we go. All right. Do you have a garden?
I don't.
Are you planning on putting one in?
I am. So this summer.
This summer? You got 2 days, yeah.
I did just buy a plant.
Okay.
And so I have it on a schedule, so today's actually my watering day.
Awesome.
And I haven't done it yet, so you just reminded me.
You better go make sure you do it.
I know.
There we go. Now we got the guest cam, so you'll get to see what that looks like.
Oh, cool.
I'll get this out of the way, because we're kind of done with the olive oil. Now what we're going to start doing is just kind of getting our pasta pan ready. So So this is a great recipe because there's a ton of downtime in between. Well, a ton, 20 minutes is not really a ton, but there's enough downtime in between the various different steps that you kind of have little sections where you can kind of go and do other things. I want this to start simmering. So there we go. And you can keep up with the chat and everything. I think you can read that.
I can't see it.
Hey, Greg, what's up, man? Yeah, it's the same with your beers and calling, man. I think your lead gen calls are awesome. I always recommend some of our newer agents go and check those out because you do a really good job with those. As far as this, I'm just putting a light layer of tomato sauce on the bottom of the pan, and I'm going to start layering some of my pasta down. As I'm layering the pasta, I'm also kind of keeping an eye on my sauce, which still isn't simmering. Oh, there we go. Perfect. That's what I want. Nice, slow little simmer. If this starts getting a little bit too aggressive, I'll turn it back down. Here we go. Doesn't have to be perfect. You can see there are areas that I'm not covering. There are areas that I am covering really well. Doesn't really matter. As long as you have some sauce down, you're good. And I've got some of these guys. Like this pasta noodle is very, very curly, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start with these guys and put them down at the very bottom because then the rest of it will weigh them down. And I'm going to give myself about 1/4 inch on each side of spacing. As they're baking, these noodles are actually going to expand a little bit. Whoa! And as they expand, they're going to just kind of push everything out. So by giving them a little bit of space, I am really going to have to clean my kitchen. Let's do this.
You wanted it to what, sizzle?
Oh yes, I do want to sizzle. This is
like way more. There we go.
There we go. Stop it. All right.
So someone did ask, did you put the basil in?
Basil goes in as we're layering it.
Ah, okay.
So
I put mine in differently.
yes, you can definitely. It doesn't. If you're using dry basil, putting it into the sauce now will actually help hydrate it and get some of the aroma out. But since you have the fresh basil right here, all the oil is still in the leaves. If you put it in now, you're actually going to bruise the basil.
Okay.
So it'll have kind of an off taste. You're not really going to notice it that much, but it's a possibility.
Okay.
With these layers, what I want to do is basically overlap everything by just a little bit. So like 1/4 inch. And again, like you don't have to be perfect. There's nothing, if you get a little bit off, it's not going to ruin the lasagna. Lasagna, you can pretty much throw everything into a pan and you're good. But you do want to layer them just a little bit. Why do you want to layer them just a little bit, Robert? Mostly just to kind of keep everything contained. When they start kind of spreading out and growing, this is what's going to give you that really nice kind of crusty waviness in the middle of the lasagna. If you don't layer them, it's just going to split and kind of crack. It's not going to look as attractive. And as we all know, the better food looks, the tastier it is. So I've got a nice little layer of 4 going this way. I'm going to put 1 going this way, and I'm going to kind of measure this one out. Hey, stop it. Just give it a nice little cut. And layer like so. Awesome. I'm going to take that and just kind of set it over there for now. Grab my towel, because now I got slimy fingers. And I'm going to slide these over just a little bit to give myself some room on the other side. This is really just me being perfectionist. You don't have to worry about that. Now, we got our ricotta cheese, and what we're going to do is we're going to use about half of this ricotta cheese on this layer. What I recommend is find whichever piece of pasta is the topmost one, put the ricotta on that, and then spread it out across the rest of them. If you start going the other way, you're actually going to start bunching these guys up just because of the way that they lay. Not ideal. And I'm just going to kind of take it and scoop little dollops up on this side. Kind of like so. And then a little bit on this one. And I'm going to go to the next layer. I'm going to skip a layer, essentially. There we are. And I'm going to try and leave just a little bit in the carton so that when we're at the so this is not, like, you're supposed to use about 1/2 of this. I'm actually using like 1/3. So if I use a third and I have a third left over, a third-ish left over, when I have all my pasta left, I can put some dollops on top and get those really nice looking like ricotta melty circles on the top. Very, very cool way of doing this. And then I'm just gonna kind of start over on this guy, flatten them out. Our sauce is over there simmering, which is great. We have 20 minutes to burn, so we're just kind of getting ahead of that. And then we're just gonna kind of layer this out and layer it down. And then feel free to use your fingers to hold certain pasta pieces in place if they're sliding around. This lowest layer is kind of the most difficult, just because there's nothing really holding it in place. As you're moving things around, the only thing there is the tomato sauce and the pasta, which is already slimy because it's got a bunch of starch in it. So it will want to kind of wiggle around. This doesn't have to be a perfectly flat layer of ricotta cheese. As you can tell, mine is anything but perfectly flat. The cool thing is, with all of the layers on top of themselves, and with the heat in the oven, this is going to melt down and become one uniform layer. So as long as you get kind of an even distribution, you should be okay. And by should, I mean you will be okay. And if you get a little bit of extra ricotta cheese, hey, you know what? That person wins a prize. All right, good to go. Now on top of the ricotta cheese, I've actually got my spinach drained over here in the sink. So I'm just gonna divide it in half. And we're gonna sprinkle it right over the ricotta cheese. Now you really, really wanna make sure you squeeze this pretty well. Any extra moisture that you have in the spinach is going to go into the pan. And you don't want a really soupy lasagna. So use a towel, paper towel, or a cloth towel like what I use. Squeeze them through like a colander, or I have a mesh strainer over there. And you really just kind of want to separate it out. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Everybody's going to get like a 3-inch by 3-inch piece of lasagna. So as long as there's a little bit of spinach within a 3-inch area, 3-inch by 3-inch area, you should be good. And we're going to be doing 2 layers of this. So you have plenty of opportunity to make sure that everybody gets a bit of spinach. There we go. Doggo. There's no reason for you to get upset. How many of y'all are cooking along tonight with me? I know Dad and Cindy were getting some ingredients. You guys said you were going to wait until tomorrow to actually cook it. You're just putting it together tonight? Or did I misread that? Did you just get all your ingredients ready so you can cook along? So another really good strategy for this is to kind of go a little bit light on your first pass. And you can see I've got some pretty good layering here, or pretty good coverage, and I've still got a bunch of spinach left over. So now I can kind of pick and choose where I'm going to be putting the extras to kind of fill in the space. If you go too heavy on one side and then not heavy enough on the other, you will have an unbalanced lasagna. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you're really a perfectionist like me, start light and then kind of fill in the extra space as you go. There we are. Now, on top of this, we're going to put in our basil. I'm going to chop up about half of it. We've already kind of gone over this where we roll it up into a little cigar shape. Grab your leaves of basil and kind of layer them on top of each other like this, with the biggest ones on the bottom. And then what you can do is essentially roll a cigar and just slice through once. And if this is too thick to roll into a cigar shape, like right here, I can probably maybe get 1 roll into it. It's good enough, doesn't matter. You're just holding everything together. Let me see if I can get this on camera. Got your knife, and you just cut through it once. You get a wonderfully julienned basil, and you're not trying to manage leaves. And then this also brings up the fact that if you don't like stems, you can literally just stop at the stems and toss them, or throw them into compost if that's what you're doing. We're gonna layer our basil over this. And again, you're going to get 2 layers of the basil and the spinach and everything. So you don't have to worry too much about getting it perfect. As long as you get a pretty even coverage, you're going to be all right. Hey, Etienne. Yeah, man. You are late for you. You're on Felicia time, so you're 9:40 almost for you. Oof. Late, late, late. At this point, we're gonna start doing our cheese. I'm gonna use about half of the mozzarella. Again, I'm gonna do like a third so that I can add some to the top layer. And go a little bit light the first pass so that you can kind of pick up the slack on the second pass and just make sure you get even coverage. Actually, Etienne was telling me yesterday that one of our friends is actually doing a lot of pizza making, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a lasagna, you know, just to kind of do a quick tester." And he was like, "Anything is pizza. It's just different ratios of cheese and bread and tomato sauce." So we got about a third of our mozzarella on here. So now we've got ricotta, spinach, the basil, mozzarella on top of that. And now we're gonna do our Pecorino or Parmesan, whichever you decide. Pecorino is a little bit saltier than Parmesan. Actually, it's a lot saltier than Parmesan. So just be careful if you add Pecorino not to add too much salt on top of it because it's already gonna be pretty salty. Cool, so we're done with this. We're gonna wait about 5 minutes for the sauce to kind of finish simmering here. And then we're gonna add a layer of sauce and then repeat the process for layer 2. 100% Felicia, pizza every day, yes. Awesome, Cindy, yeah. That's what I thought you said, but I just wanted to make sure. Oh yeah, I guess we could put the beer in the fridge.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you're good. It does get pretty warm in this kitchen. What happens when you're on fire? So I think this is the 14th or 15th cook along live that I've done. I welcome feedback, so if you guys have any feedback for me, please let me know. I want to make this better so that everybody can enjoy it for a good long time to come. I'm gonna pop the lid off of this real quick, give it a stir. I'll set this. There we go. Give this a stir. Are you guys enjoying the recipe selection? I'm trying not to make too many of the same styles of dishes. I'm trying to give it a good, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to make like a good portfolio of different dishes. So hopefully I'm not getting too boring, but I think we're doing all right. I could do pizza, but what I could do with it is give you guys the recipe to make the dough and then assume that the dough is done, and then we can actually make the pizza, like rolling out the dough and getting that already, making the sauce and stuff like that. Doing the dough would be an all-day process, so I don't want to do that. That would be really not something fun to watch, unless you like watching paint dry. Watching dough rise is very similar to watching paint dry. But yeah, like I'm happy to do that. Maybe not next week since this is kind of an Italian dish here. However, we can get that going here pretty soon. And I think I'm done with this lid. Let's get this set over here. Now what I'm gonna do is I want a bigger spoon. Thank you. Now, before you put the sauce in the pan, we're gonna taste it and make sure that we add seasoning. So I'm gonna use my ricotta spoon, and I'm actually gonna switch this out with a non-used spoon. And that needs a little bit of salt. And again, I'm not gonna add too much because I've got a lot of pecorino in there, and the pecorino is gonna add a lot of salt flavor. Now, when I say I'm not going to add a lot of salt and I put 2 gigantic pinches into the sauce, remember the sauce is super, super acidic, so it's going to really cut down on the salt flavor and the seasoning flavor, like the power of it, how strong it is, the strength of the seasoning. So what we really want to do is just make sure that we get enough seasoning in here so that it's adding flavor but not getting super salty. There we are. This over into there. Now what I'm going to do is just take a couple of scoops and just put them right over the center. And you're gonna say, but Rob, that sauce is molten lava hot and you're gonna melt the cheese. You know what? The cheese is gonna melt in the oven, so it doesn't really matter. We're just gonna kind of get this layered, and we wanna use about 1/3 of the sauce. We're gonna put a nice thin layer on here. And I'm just gonna kind of go from the center out, like so. And again, this is just our first pass. It doesn't have to be perfect. If I need to add sauce somewhere, or if I need to balance it out somehow, I have plenty of time to do that. At this point, I'm just trying to get a nice thin layer over all of this cheese and spinach and pasta yumminess. So Anise is actually vegetarian. So what drew you to being a vegetarian? Have you always been vegetarian, or?
No, I actually was pescatarian first.
Okay.
And then I then decided just to vegetarian. For real estate, I wanted to do X-ray.
Okay, very cool.
So I was taking a biology class and just seeing some live cadavers. Mm-hmm. And so it just kind of, it made me think of meat.
Yep, as it probably could.
Yeah, and so I was just done at that point.
Totally understand.
Thinking about it before.
Awesome. What challenges did you face when you went from being pescatarian to going vegetarian, or was it pretty easy?
It was pretty easy.
Awesome.
I would suggest that people do that first.
Yeah, for sure.
Vegetarianism.
My sister actually used to be pescatarian for a long time. She didn't go vegetarian. She actually went the other way, but
okay.
She was pescatarian almost all through high school.
Oh, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was a pretty cool, pretty interesting thing to see her do.
It's been a year and a half.
Awesome, congratulations on that. So this time, you remember last time we had our first noodle. Not the first noodle, but the one going the short way on this side. So this time I'm going to start on this side and make that the noodle, and then we're going to put our long noodles over on this side. So what you're doing is almost weaving them, like interweaving them. And that just kind of lends to a more balanced dish. Honestly, that's just me sounding poncy. You can do it however you want. And we're just gonna do the same thing here, where we give a little bit of an overlay, about 1/4 of an inch. Like so. And I've turned off the heat on this, so it's just kind of literally chilling over there. We're gonna go back to our ricotta. This is layer 2. We're gonna do a very similar thing over here, where we just kind of put a couple of dollops on the one side. Put a couple of dollops on the skip one piece of pasta, and try and keep about 1/3 of the ricotta left over for the top layer. Because otherwise the top layer looks kind of boring. It's just sauce and a little bit of Pecorino cheese. I like having the little dollops. If you are using eggs, you can also put little egg slices on the top. I think that looks kind of cool. I'm not. I'm just going to do cheese because I like cheese. I like cheese more than I like eggs. There we go. And this is vegetarian, so I'm not sure if I can use eggs. But again, we're just going to do a nice thin layer. What's your favorite vegetarian dish?
Oh my lord. That's a good question.
I'll give you a couple seconds to think about it.
Okay.
I like tabbouleh. That's kind of my favorite thing to make just in general.
Okay.
Are you familiar with it? It's a Middle Eastern parsley salad dish.
I haven't had it, but I am familiar with it, I guess.
Cool.
It's on my list of things to make.
It is super, super tasty. Give yourself a little bit of time to make it the first time.
Okay.
There's a lot of chopping. And if you're just in a hurry, coarsely chop everything and call it a taballad, and you're good. That's what I do. I think I invented that term, actually.
I like that.
My stepmom was like, make tabbouleh, and we had like 15 minutes. I was like, there's no way I'm gonna have tabbouleh ready. And this was for like a large group of people. I was like, I'll just chop everything up, throw it all into a bowl and call it taballad. It worked. Cool, so now we need our spinach, which we've got our other half of spinach over here in the sink. I've got a nice big metal colander. Same thing, very, very similar. We're just layering now. So from this point on, all of this is gonna be super, super simple. Go a little bit light on the first pass and then fill in all the gaps with whatever you got left over. Let me get this a little bit more. Can you imagine being my dog? He has to sit here and watch me cook all of this, smell all this amazing food, and he doesn't get any of it, ever.
You know, I didn't know you had a cat.
The cat is here, yes.
The cat scared me.
Oh, there's something else in here.
I'm like, oh my god.
So the cat's name is Buttercup. So Princess Bride,
Okay.
that was Princess Buttercup.
Dog is just like, I'm over this.
Yeah, totally. It's like, give me food. And the fun thing is, I actually, like I think I've already mentioned this a couple times on the live stream. I cook these things twice. I have to cook one on Monday so I can take a picture.
Okay.
Because I can't just go and steal a picture off the internet. That's
Right. Not your style.
not my style, and it's just not kosher.
Right.
And so, yeah, I have to cook one on. I actually ended up giving the first one that I made, like most of it, to Rod and his family.
Oh yeah.
So his daughter Ava is also vegetarian.
Right.
So I was just like, hey, I've got like a gazillion pounds of vegetarian lasagna. So if you'd like, by all means, come over and pick some up.
It's a good dish because a lot of people don't know what to make for their vegetarian guests.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'm always just like, can you make lasagna or I'll bring it. It's totally fine.
Totally. I'm good with vegetarian. I struggle with vegan. If people are like, I'm vegan, I can't have like any, because I can't use cheese. I mean, you can use the vegan cheese, but it's like, it doesn't melt the same. It's just a little bit different. And it's not really a big issue. It's just always challenging for me when someone's like, yeah, I'm a vegan. I'm just like, cool, I'll see what I can do.
I wonder, could they eat salad?
Depends on the salad, yeah. Depends on the dressing that you're using. Yeah, can't use milk-based dressings.
Oh, okay.
It would have to be some kind of oil and like a vinegar.
That sounds good too.
Totally. But it does get a little bit more difficult with what you're putting on the salad. So no cheeses on the salad. And again, you could use the vegan cheeses, but they're just a little bit different. So again, I'm just going to kind of put like a nice even layer of cheese here. And I'm saving about a third, if I can, for the top layer. But I do want to get a good covering of mozzarella. And Cindy actually scared me shitless earlier. She's like, what is this? No mozzarella in this recipe? And I was like, oh God, did I forget to put the mozzarella in the ingredients list? And then I went and checked and I saw mozzarella and I was like, I think it's there. She was like, yeah, I forgot to add it to my shopping list. And I was like, all right, good. It wasn't my fault. Cool, cool. So we got a nice even layer of pecorino. We're just reserving again a third of that. So we got a third of the cheeses left. We're gonna do one more layer of our basil. Same thing, we're just gonna roll this up into a little cigar, grab the biggest piece, and just start layering them on top. You could have chopped this all up at once if you wanted to. I wanted to make a point of doing it in 2 separate batches. For me, it's easier to see a half of a pile of leaves than it is a half of a pile of shreds, and I probably would have used most of it for the first layer. Doesn't really matter. Now we'll just roll this up as best we can. I mean, in something like this where it's a nice stack, you can totally just leave it stacked and chop through it. The rolling it just kind of makes it compact, I guess. And we'll just chop right through all of this like so. What are you doing for Father's Day this weekend?
You know, that's a great question. Not everything is opening back up, but there's some soft opens.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
I finally went and got a haircut. I felt so damn good after the haircut.
Hey, nice haircut.
Thank you. Man, when I got that done, I was like, and went to Sport Clips, and they are doing a fantastic job of like social distancing.
Okay.
So they basically have you come in. They won't let you into the store unless you have an appointment already. They're really promoting doing the online thing. Good with this, so we're gonna add another layer of our sauce. Move this over here. When you go in, you have to wear a face mask. They'll do a temperature check before they let you into the store. They'll check you in outside, like check you in once you've already made an appointment or whatever. Let you into the store when it's like 5 minutes before your appointment time. They sanitize all of their stuff between every client, and you get a fresh drape thing.
Yeah.
What's it called? Apron, I guess.
Apron? Yeah, sure.
They give you a fresh one for each client. When you're done, they don't take it off of you. You have to bundle it up on yourself and put it in the wash bin. So they're doing a really good job of trying to minimize exposure, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
What got you out of doing X-ray?
Well, I'm not necessarily out. I'm waitlisted.
I see. Okay.
For 2 years.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay because everything works out.
Definitely.
The way it's supposed to. So I'm doing real estate instead.
Hey, you know what? It's a fun career.
Yeah. And I get to meet nice people like you, so that's great.
Oh, yes. People, well, I don't know if I'm nice, but meeting the nice people part is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll notice that I had a couple of little dry spots, so I'm just kind of adding a little bit of sauce. Now we're going to put our final layer on, and then we get to toss it in the oven. So, final layer, we're going to do one more layer of our noodles. So I'm going to go, again, I'm going to shift back over onto this side. And we're going to put our width piece over here. And do our nice little kind of 1/4 inch cover. If it's starting to curve one way or the other, always put the curve side down because it'll flatten out. There we are. On this layer, I'm actually going to do an extra one because I've got a little bit too much space on that side. There we go.
Is this the ready-made pasta?
No, I actually boiled it before I started.
Right, it looks great.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You got to pull it out like just before it's fully cooked. So if it says 6 to 8 minutes, pull it off at 5.
Okay.
And I didn't season any of the water because if you season the pasta, sometimes, like with a lasagna dish, it's easier to season the sauce because there's more sauce than there is pasta.
Okay.
And you can like really overdo the pasta, which I did on my first one. So I was like, I'll just leave that. I'll season everything else, it'll be fine. There we are. And then we'll just kind of eyeball this based on the other 2 pieces. So about there. Should be good. And we'll layer. Perfect. So on this one, we're just going to put a layer of sauce. We don't have any more of our spinach. We do have ricotta, but we're not going to put it on this. We're going to put it on top. Here we are, and I'm spilling sauce all over my counter, which is awesome. It's the best way to cook. Should put my dog up on the counter afterwards. He'd be happy. Now this top layer is really going to be up to you. If you want to see the pasta, make it a really, really thin layer. If you want to not see the pasta and just kind of see the sauce, make it a thicker layer. I like to kind of go medium so I can see little edges of the pasta. But I know that there's sauce all over the place. So it really, really will look like a lasagna. There we go. Would you stop that? Yeah, I know you're grumpy. He is, I think, 7 years old.
Oh, okay.
This month.
What kind of dog?
He's a poodle and something mix. He's a rescue, so we got him in South Carolina.
Oh, awesome.
There we are. And our lasagna is almost done. We're going to do our last remaining bit of mozzarella here. Sprinkle it right over the top. Now this layer, if you screw it up, since everybody can see it, you're done. It's where they kick you out of culinary school. Not that I ever went to culinary school, but I would imagine this is where you're going to get in big trouble. I'm kidding. I don't actually believe that. Same with the pecorino. We're just going to kind of sprinkle it. You can use the pecorino to kind of fill in the gaps that you missed with the mozzarella. Mozzarella is going to become a lot more melty than the pecorino, just so that you know. Don't overcook the lasagna because the pecorino is not melting. Or the Parmesan. They're not very melty cheeses. But our ricotta is a nice little melty cheese. So I'm going to start with a dollop in the middle. And a dollop on either side. And what this is going to do is they're going to kind of melt down into little circle puddles of cheesy goodness. And again, go a little bit light on these for the first couple of dollops. And then you can always adjust them by adding more. Oh, and Kitty is out. And Doggo is jealous. And so I'm just going to kind of do like a little bit of a reverse checkerboard pattern here. I guess is what you could call it, something like so. And then that's a bit much cheese for that one, but I'm missing some on this. There we go. So we've used up all of our Pecorino, all of our mozzarella, and all of our ricotta cheese, and our lasagna is ready to go in the preheated 350-degree oven. So what we're going to do, we're going to cover this with a little bit of aluminum foil. We're going to put it in the oven for 25 minutes, and then we're going to take off the aluminum foil and let it finish baking for the remaining 25 minutes. Now you're thinking, Robert, how are you going to fill 50 minutes of airtime? And I just got to tell you, we got some karaoke coming up that is going to blow your socks off, and that's going to be for the next 50 minutes. I'm kidding.
I was going to say I did not, but I'm down.
Karaoke, I love karaoke.
We might be able to do that.
Well,
Go in for a surprise.
here's the fun thing. I actually cooked 3 lasagnas this week.
Robert.
Because since we're not doing anything else with this lasagna and it's literally just going to come out of the oven and be done, I went ahead and pre-baked one. When my oven went on, I actually turned it off. Tricky, tricky, ha ha ha. There we are. So we're going to let our lasagna cool for about, I guess, what is it, 25 minutes is how long I let that cool in the oven. And then, if I can find this guy. Still a little warm, not super hot, but warm. We're just going to cut right into this, like so. Now this lasagna pan right here is a 9 by 13. The one that I put in there is a 15 by 10. So this one here I was only able to get 3 lasagnas wide and 1 on the end. So I actually made an extra layer. So I did a quarter, a quarter, a quarter, and then the last quarter up on top here. So you can definitely adjust this for the size of your pan. And do you like edge pieces or center pieces?
Edge.
Perfect. You'll also notice that on this one I totally forgot to put the basil in, so I sprinkled it all on top.
Oh, totally fine.
So you can totally adjust lasagna however you want it to be. There we are. There we are. Let me grab a couple of plates. So really the lasagna that you're currently baking, once it's done, you're just gonna let it cool down, and this is what's gonna be coming out of the oven. I've said a bunch of times I don't wanna do any kind of cook-alongs where I'm cooking, putting something in, pulling something out that then I have to do something to, right? This is a finished product. Once it's been in the oven and coming out, this is what you're gonna get. You can just cut it up and serve it however you want. Let's go ahead, and I always call one of these a sacrificial piece because it's going to look terrible, but then once you get that one out, you can get all the rest of them out a lot nicer. So that's the sacrificial one. So this is the one that I'm going to eat because the chef gets the garbage piece. And then I will go here. There we go.
Make sure not to eat before I came because I was like, I'm going to eat.
Good. And there you go. That is a beautiful vegetarian lasagna. Still kind of sizzling a little bit. Lots of melty cheese. That camera actually doesn't really do it very much justice. Let me switch over to here and see if, there we go. That's a much nicer color, but it's not focusing on the lasagna. Oh well. I'll take a picture for the gram. You guys will all see it later. There you are, my dear.
Thank you so much.
And fork for you. Would you like a knife as well?
No.
Perfect. Me neither. All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Have an excellent weekend. Take pictures of the lasagna that you made. I want to see what it looks like when it came out. Even if you're not doing it tonight, if you're cooking it over the weekend, just let me know. Come back and find this post lasagna, and let's do it. I want to see what you guys made. This is a super easy dish. If you did end up using meat in the sauce, just let me know, because I'm actually curious to see how it came out. Oh man, the ramen skills. If I did ramen, like that ramen, the broth itself took me 6 hours to make, about 6 to 7 hours to make. Super amazing. Like, it is the best ramen broth that I've ever had. That would not be very fun to watch on stream. Maker's Mark? What are you making with Maker's Mark? Hey, Haley, how's it going? Eggplant Parmesan. Yeah, I guess I could do that, but I don't like eggplant. So, no. And I've already done chicken Parmesan. Ooh, Dad got a personalized haircut. Home style, huh? All right. Let me see a picture. Ooh, that's a good idea. Use the ricotta container to freeze the remaining sauce. I like that. Awesome, awesome. So I could like double the sauce or triple the sauce, and I've got plenty of sauce for later. Awesome, Felicia. You have a great night. This is one of the short cook-alongs. It didn't take me an hour and 45 minutes like the last one. And I actually thought this was going to be one of the longer ones, because when I was making the previous batches, it was taking me, I was chopping the mushrooms by hand. That's a lot of chopping. Anyway, you guys all have a great weekend, and I will see you next week on Cook Along Live. Bye.